Thank you all for joining us. We're going to give everyone just a few moments to get settled in the room, and then we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us for our June webinar entitled Rural Modes. And this is for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, Sneak Peek and Setting the Stage. My name is Jamie Sullivan. I'm the director for the National Center for Rural Road Safety, and we're excited to have you all with us today. As always, a few logistics. Our webinar will be an hour and a half long today. To use closed captioning for the webinar, you can click on the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. You can also use that to adjust the captions using the same button. As always, we will be recording today's webinar for our website archival, and you can find that at ruralsafetycenter.org/webinar-archive if you'd like to share this with others after the fact. It should be up there within a few days. We will have a question and answer pod where you can put questions for our presenters at any time. And when they are finished with their presentation, I will go ahead and ask those questions of them. If you would like to alert organizers of any technical difficulties you may be having, we'd also ask you to put those in the question and answer pod. As you'll notice, the chat pod will be used for a lot of discussion between our attendees. And so if you have questions or technical difficulties, it's easier for us to find those in that Q&A pod. We also will have handouts available for download. Our staff will be posting those in the chat pod here periodically so that you can download them. We will have a feedback form at the end of today's webinar, if you wouldn't mind filling that out and providing us with some additional information about topics you'd like to see us have for our webinars for the rest of the year. And then, as always, we do have certificates of completion and an application for CE for the more formal CEUs that will be provided within 6 to 8 weeks to you for completing today's webinar. A few announcements for you all. First, I'd like to thank our co-host for today's webinar, the NL-TAPA Safety Working Group. I'd also like to let you know that we have released episode 9 of our Home Safely podcast. This one features Holly Kostrowski. She is an international keynote speaker from a frontier rural community. She also is a traumatic brain injury survivor and a traffic safety specialist. So in this podcast, she talks a little bit about her personal story and how she became a supporter of tribal, state, and federal transportation safety programs. She talks a little bit about safe system approach in the rural context, and then also some steps that rural and local agencies can take to improve their transportation systems. So we'd love to have you take a listen to this as well as any of the first 8 episodes that we have available on our website too. I do also want to let you know that NHTSA has released a new resource for tribes called Bridging Cultures to Buckle Up, a guide for working with tribes to increase seatbelt use. You can use these QR codes to download both the guide itself as well as the traffic tech on the guide that provides a briefer summary of the information. And then I'm excited that we have a few presenters for you today. We're going to start off with Kevin Elliott, who is our marketing manager. He is going to talk a little bit about Rural Road Safety Awareness Week. Kevin, as I mentioned, is our marketing manager and manages all outreach and external communication for the National Center. He specializes in transportation safety, communication, and education, marketing strategy, delivery of creative design projects, branding, marketing, communication plan development, video production, and professional writing. His clients also include multiple safety teams in the Federal Highway Administration, as well as the Florida, South Dakota, and Iowa and Ohio Departments of Transportation. He lives in Panama City, Florida, with his wife and his 12 chickens, and I'm very excited to turn over our presentation now to Kevin to get us started.
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, everybody. Hey, thank you for coming to this. We love doing these webinars, but this one is a pretty fun and special one because you get a little sneaky peek of Rural Road Safety Awareness Week and what's going on. what we have planned, what we've been working on, and what we want to share with you. So the way these sneak peeks go is we're going to show you where we are right now. And as you probably have experienced before, we have a few more iterations to do and some final tweaking to do. These are all in final review and might change a little bit, but nothing crazy. So just putting that disclaimer at the beginning. These are not ready for you to go grab and have just yet, but they will be soon. And so without further ado, let me show you what we are working on this year. Let me share my screen. And away we go. So here's a sneak peek of Rural Road Safety Awareness Week 2026. You're going to see this hashtag a whole bunch of times. And that's my attempt to like drill it into your head to please on your social media when you participate in Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, please use this hashtag. That does a number of things. One, it's just good social media practice, and it helps with algorithms and things. It also helps us go back and search and find and see and measure the success of this campaign, how far and wide it went. So when you do that, it just makes it searchable for us and makes it a more cohesive campaign for those who aren't as familiar with it. If you are familiar with Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, here's what we do. Every July, we pick a theme, or every year we pick a theme for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week in July. And we try and find something that is timely to rural transportation practitioners, something that is of national significance and importance. And we try to highlight, raise awareness of that topic for that year. And so if you're out there in those rural areas, and you are, because you're on this webinar, you know there are a lot of really, really important topics out there. But one thing that keeps coming back over and over when we talk to people is how diverse rural transportation is. And at first blush, people who don't live or work in rural areas may not understand that, but how complex rural transportation is. Ben's going to talk a little bit about that in his presentation. But it is very common in a rural area to have all kinds of modes working at the same time. You have everything from the family vehicle, the mom van, to RVs, motorcycles, bicycles, combines, horse and buggies. There are so many different ATVs, snow machines, and they're all trying to use some of the same spaces at the same time. And that presents a lot of challenges that rural practitioners have to deal with. And so what we decided to do this year was focus on that. Our overall theme this year is called the Rural Modes. And we're going to highlight each category of mode in the rural areas and then try to provide resources and links and information on those so you can help to make your rural roads safer and accommodate all of these increasing numbers of transportation modes. So I'm in North Florida, and we are golf cart land down here. Golf carts everywhere, and every community everywhere is dealing with golf carts and e-bikes because the kids are on e-bikes. So it's getting more diverse, not less. So we jumped into that theme. The audience for this are practitioners and also travelers. We want people who are not technical, people who are not in this world every single day, to have something they can latch onto and learn from Rural Road Safety Awareness Week. Each day during Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, we break down our theme into individual topics. And so each of the 5 days has a topic. For this year, we categorized and named different modes of transportation. So we have the roadway regulars. Tuesday is the micro movers. Wednesday is the big movers. Thursday, route runners. And Friday, the uncommon cruisers. And if you look at this, you might be wondering, and if you are familiar with Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, you know we like to play with concepts here. So in like 2022, we did a movie poster concept, and we looked at all the elements of the safe system approach as movie genres. We have done the Great American Road Trip. We did baseball last year. And so we try to find a fun sort of concept to put this in because it makes it fun to play with and do social media around. But we always ask ourselves this question every year: how do we communicate all this stuff? How do we communicate this information in a way that is fun and engaging and shareable. This is what we came up with. We said, what if the rural modes were a video game? What would that look like? Well, we think it would look like this. This year, we're going to play the game called the Rural Modes. And each day is going to focus on the ones that I just mentioned and have really cool graphics and fun video game themed assets that you can play with and you can download and you can use. And I'm going to show you some of those again in final draft, but still draft form. This is our overall theme this year, and we are super excited about it and have had a ton of fun making it. Each day we have our overall topic, and then each day of the week we break out those modes that I read to you: roadway regulars, micro movers, big movers, route runners, and uncommon cruisers. And so we'll have a central graphic you can grab for those days. I can give you the individual assets for each of these. We encourage you all to play. We encourage you to share these, to customize these, use them however you want. We really just want you to participate this year. And when you see these graphics, and again, with maybe some minor changes, here's the basic layout. We focused on a topic. We made it look like a video game. And then you'll see here, if you want to level up, like if you want to win this level of this mode, here are some things that practitioners can do when they're driving. They can slow down, they can buckle up, and they can stay alert. And then we have information for practitioners. What can practitioners do on the other side to help level up roadway regulars, the sort of trucks and cars and SUVs that are so common on our roads? Speed management, enforcement, and proven safety countermeasures. So you get it. The idea is to play along with the game, and at every level, somebody has something they can do to level up and make our roadway safer. But that's what we made. This is stuff we made, but we want you to participate. And we have made some ways that we think are pretty easy for you to participate in. And all of this stuff will be on the website shortly. So you can do proclamations. You can go to your state DOT or to your state, and you can say, hey, we want to proclaim this week every year as Rural Road Safety Awareness Week. We have on our website put a template there for you to download. That template is actually live. The 2026 one, you can do it. There are instructions there. There are some examples. You'll see on the screen here, Kansas has done this. Wisconsin did this. Louisiana has done this. And they got proclamations. And that way it sort of enshrines Rural Road Safety Awareness Week in your state. You can go to our website right now at ruralsafetycenter.org/proclamation, and the template and all that stuff is right there. So that's one way you can participate. The other one is social media, and maybe the biggest one is social media. And there are two main ways people play along on social media. One is they share our stuff. We're going to make these assets. We are going to post them through our channels, and you can just share them. You can just grab them. You can share our post. Whatever you want to do, we will give you all of that stuff. And so these are some examples from last year, from Rural Road Safety Awareness Week 2025, when we did Big League Safety post-crash care. So you can just share our stuff and be done with it. Or you can make your own stuff. Here are some examples from others who took our statistics, or they made completely new graphics based on their own, or they took ours and they customized them in their own way. And we love all of this. Every bit of this we want you to do. So grab our stuff, customize our stuff, make completely new stuff, just make stuff and share it. We do ask, again, that you use the hashtag for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, RRSAW 2026. You can see these examples from last year. These people played along and did the hashtag for 2025. Please put that hashtag in all of your posts. So those are our ideas. That's where we are. That's a little sneak peek of what we have up our sleeve and what we're doing and what we are planning. We would love your ideas. What are you thinking? What could you do? Please share them with us. Tag us on social media. Send us an email. That's my email there at the bottom. Message us on our social channels, whatever. We want to see what you do and celebrate you so we can share your stuff and we can get the word out about how diverse rural modes are and equip people out there in the field to make these roads safer. So please reach out to us. Please contact us. We have our info email. We absolutely answer that email. That's my email after that. And our website is there. All of our social channels are there. Go there and follow us at Rural Road Safety. Message us anytime. Send questions our way. And let's all play along. And let's have a really good time making rural roads safer this year for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week. And I'm going to stop right there and see if there are any questions. I have not been monitoring the chat pod. But if there are, anybody please jump in.
We do not have any questions so far.
Okay. Okay.
We do have more of a couple notes. Some I will share with you after. There is one in the chat pod right now that says they're wondering if there's a way to tie it together with the 100 Deadliest Days social media campaign because they overlap.
Okay. I am not familiar with that one, but I will become familiar with that one soon. and then we will see.
I'll send the link to Kevin. And we do have someone else asking what that is. The 100 Deadliest Days come between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
Got it. Okay. What an interesting tie-in. 100 safety. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Carol.
Someone dropped the link in the chat pod.
Yep, I saw that. Okay, very good.
Yep.
Sweet. Okay, well, good. Well, I learned something. This is why we do these webinars. So this is one of the most active chat pods of webinars. Our audience is awesome. So I love doing these things because you're so communicative. Okay, cool. Well, if there are no more questions for me or comments, then I will turn it back to Jamie and get Ben on here. Oh, and one last thing, Julie. So when you say play along, yes, you are correct. We unfortunately did not have the budget to make a real video game. Though don't get me wrong, we all sat around here and tried to think of ways that we could afford to do that, but we were not able to pull off an actual game. So no, this is just conceptual.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin. And now, in addition to showing you all what we had for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week, we're really excited to set the stage and talk a little bit about rural and mobility. And so our next speaker is Benjamin Winchester, who is a rural sociologist from the University of Minnesota Extension Department of Community Development. Ben has been working both in and for small towns across the Midwest for around 30 years. He lives in St. Cloud, Minnesota with his wife and 2 children. He is trained as a rural sociologist and works in the Extension Department of Community Development at University of Minnesota. He conducts applied research on economic, social, and demographic topics surrounding a theme of rewriting the rural narrative and received the Rural Renewal Research Prize in 2021 for his work. I have seen his presentations a couple of times, and I'm very excited for you all now to get to experience those as well. I'm thrilled to have Ben here with us to present. So Ben?
Hi, Jamie. Thanks. Thanks, Kevin. Really, thanks to everyone here for serving your communities and caring about your rural places. My name is Ben Winchester. I'm a rural sociologist with the University of Minnesota Extension. I think you know Extension is like the 4-H people. I wasn't in 4-H, but I consider myself like raised by Extension. I've been with the University of Minnesota for 25 years, roughly. Doing a variety of different work. It's really all my work is around this theme of rewriting the rural narrative. And we're not going to get into all of that today, but the premise behind that work is that we're not dying. My gosh, I mean, if our rural communities are dying, then why can't I find a home to buy? So I document the ways in which we have not died for the past 40, 50 years. So we do have a narrative out there that there's a brain drain. We live in the middle of nowhere. We live in a sleepy town that was woken up by the tornado. Right? Nobody locks their doors. Everybody knows one another. We have a lot of stereotypes about what we think we see and what we think exists in rural communities. So it's been my job to really help tell the narrative of the modern rural communities across not just Minnesota, but across the country. I follow in the footsteps of a rural sociologist, Charles Galpin, out of Wisconsin. He served as an extension agent like me in Western Wisconsin, and he was very interested in like how people defined community. And so, as do I. And so one of the things that he did in the late 1800s, early 1900s was he went out to rural countrysides and he wanted to know, like, did the people who lived here like associate themselves with Hancock, Minnesota, or with Morris? Like, which way Did the wagon wheels turn? So this is what he did. He would go to the end of people's driveways and just drew a direction about which way did the preponderance of traffic go from the end of the driveway. And then he would make maps, and then he actually would talk to people about like, hey, where do you get your newspaper from? Where do your kids go to high school? And again, you start to see these patterns that people do not live and work and shop and play and live their life in just one town. We are not as parochial as 1810 or where we can never get out, where it's horse and wagon. These are modern societies. We and Galpin saw this shift. And so he asked people like, where would you take your milk? So, and again, everybody goes in different directions for different things. And so part of the work that we do here in Minnesota and across our other extensions across the upper Midwest is to try to document like what are the stories of the new people moving into small towns and rural places? Again, the idea I have is that we're not dying, our homes have been filled up. So I've been documenting what I call the brain gain. And it's not just Minnesota, it's nationally. This trend started in the 70s, and that there's a pattern of people in their 30s and 40s primarily, but also into their 50s, that are moving to rural communities. It started in the 70s, slowed in the 80s, the 90s, was filling up every vacant home we had. 2000s, this trend slowed, and the 2010s, and we weren't sure why. I'll talk about this in a minute. But again, this trend, when we would go out then, and we noticed in the census data, there's a regular pattern of these cohorts getting bigger. We would go out and ask all these new residents, why did you move to this small town and rural place? And the top three reasons have consistently been for years. Number one, simpler pace of life, immediate access to recreation, getting away from a commute. There's like push and pull factors, right? So quality of life, number one. Number two is safety and security. That was especially high with people with children and female-headed households. The Nebraska folks said, man, you put a picture of a kid riding their bike on the street, and that is the ideal, right? That is that image of safety. And the third top reason was the low cost of housing. Spoiler alert, the low cost of housing is no longer even in the top 10 because the home values in our rural communities have not gone down. We are not dying. In fact, our rural communities have had the highest demand than ever. And during the pandemic, it did not save our small towns. We have already saved ourselves. The only thing the pandemic did was exacerbated the already high demand for our rural communities, which led to housing home values going up to the point that that is no longer in the top 10 of reasons why people move into our small towns. One thing you'll notice here that you don't find of the top 10 of why people move is because they took on a job there. A lot of times people think, and if you're talking to an economic developer in your small town, and they have an industrial attraction mentality, meaning like, man, the only thing we need to do is have a business here, and then people will move here. And that is the industrial attraction model of economic development. And then what's the only motivation for people to move to a small town is when they have a job there. Well, I'll tell you, the entire time I've been doing these studies, a job has not cracked 50%. So we do surveys, interviews, focus groups with new residents moving in, new households. And we ask, did you move to this community because you had a job or a job offer in this town? Just 41% in 2019 is the latest study we did. It's been around 40% for 20 years. So the three data points we have here around people moving into small towns are from a year before the pandemic, a year into the pandemic, we did a survey in Montana, and now last year we finished our South Dakota survey, and we find that those households reporting that they moved for a job continues to fall. It was 4 out of 10 households before the pandemic, and now into the pandemic, it was just 35%. And right, this makes sense because employees were afforded an opportunity to move wherever they wanted, maybe for the first time ever. And what did they choose? Rural communities. And we start to see last year, this number falls even further. Just 1 in 4 newcomer households are moving to your community because they have a job or a job offer in that town. So another data point I want to hit on, which isn't always related to transportation, but it's important for you to know, is that not everybody moving to your small town is from there. In fact, our towns are filled with people not from there, but there is a high level of social cachet with the people who like, oh, your dad sat on the council for 25 years, and now they seem to have more like social capital and social cachet than anybody who just moved in. But our towns are consistently filled with people not from there. A year before the pandemic, and this has been long-standing for 17 years, just 1 in 4 newcomer households were from there. But during the pandemic, this number went up where it was now 1 in 3 households were from there. And that is they are returnees. Like they grew up in Clontarf and then they moved away and they came back. And that number went up for the first time. And when we started to dig into it, like if rural communities are dying, then you should be able to find homes everywhere, but we're not. How do you find a home to buy during the pandemic? You better know somebody who knows people who lived in the community before. And we saw that bump a year into the pandemic during the highest demand for rural housing that we have ever seen, led to a higher percentage of households being returnees. But now we are back down to roughly the 1 in 4 households, which has been the consistent pattern. So I would get asked all the time, like, man, if there's all these new people moving to my small town, like, where are they? They're not engaged in my groups. And then we think social life is dying and, people just don't care about this town. And I say, you're right. There are new people moving in and they're not coming to your groups. Rather, they're going to their groups. So I do a nonprofit analysis. I look at the growth of the nonprofit sector across this country for the past 40 years. And even in Minnesota, and I've got Minnesota, if you want other state data, like I've got a bunch of Montana, I've been there, you'll see the Montana data coming up for other things. But if you want your state data, let me know. But what we have found is like, again, there's not some like antiquated social infrastructure where like, new people moving into town, you just need to learn how we do it around here. That's not how it is. These newcomers are moving in and creating new groups all the time. In fact, 56% of the nonprofits in Minnesota have been created in just the past 30 years. And what kind of groups are they? Recreation, sports, athletics, leisure, education, arts, culture, humanities, philanthropy. Like this looks different. So now who do you see? Like you don't know all the people moving into a small town. In fact, we may have no way to even know when they move in because we don't have any way to welcome them in. So now, what is the narrative you have about your community, about how it's changing, about where you are? A lot of times we continue to hang our hat upon our best days are behind us. Look at all these empty businesses. Do not let like an empty bank or an empty, hardware store in a town of 300 people give you the indication that you're dying because your homes are still full. And this is my point. How did we arrive at the point that we have such a negative narrative on one hand, but on the other hand, I can't find a home to buy? So again, I'm documenting the ways in which we have not died. So social life is diversified too. And the one thing on the engagement side I want you to take away from this is that we used to have groups that served places, right? It would be like I lived in Hancock, Minnesota, population 770 roughly. And you used to have groups that served our place, and they used to do everything, right? The Hancock Community Betterment Club. It raised money for the church or for the playground and the school or whatever. The point was it was a narrow geography with a broad focus. So the Hancock Community Betterment Club. Today, people want to be involved in just the opposite on both axes. Rather than a narrow geography, it's a broad geography. Rather than a broad focus, it's a narrow focus. So now you go from the Hancock Community Betterment Club to the West Central Minnesota Snowmobile Association. And you know what? It's like 14 counties big. There's 180 people in this group. And it's 2 from your town and 5 from your town and 3 from your town. So this is the shift. And if we are to do engagement work better, it's bridging these groups. We're not going to get into this. I have a whole nother presentation about leadership we can talk about later at a later time. But so now we get to the economy. So again, these people aren't just moving in and taking on local jobs. We live in these regional centers now. And this is where the economic growth has been. So while we have closed our hardware stores and our grocery stores in the smallest towns, we have saw the rise of regional centers, and it's been an exchange. So, right, we closed the hardware store in Hancock, but we opened up our big box retailer in Alexandria. So we have seen this transformation of our local economy, right? Economists will say it's economic, restructuring. And it's just a kind way of saying like business is closed and there's new things that pop up. So, and what we do know is that this growth has happened in regional centers. Dartmouth did these studies around mega regions about the extent to which people are connected to these regions and connecting all of your neighboring and kind of hinterland communities to these places. And this is the relationship between home and work, right? And if on the map data is out there, and this is Polk County, Minnesota, Northwest. A lot of folks use this data to understand some of these dynamics around how many people are, commuting in and commuting out every day. So, for example, in Polk County, this is up by Grand Forks, if you'll see Grand Forks up there, but it's like 4,800 people commute into the county every day from outside those boundaries. Every day, 7,600 people that live in this boundary commute out to a job somewhere else. And just 47% or 6,700 people both live and work in this county. You could do the same thing. Hubbard County, Minnesota, 2,000 people every day are commuting in, 5,400 people commuting out every day. It's 37% of work and live in the county. And I think part of this point is like, I just want to remind you that our county boundaries were drawn during a time of horse and buggy. They don't reflect how people live. And this is why I want to just start this conversation around the tensions that we feel around jurisdictional outcomes and the behaviors that people actually engage in. And they're so different. When we're demanding that our counties have outcomes, when how much control do you have over your county outcomes when you're wholly dependent upon the region that you live in, as an example. So I like to portray the decoupling of home and work. I work with Catherine Lays, an educator in southwestern Minnesota here, and we've documented the ways in which we have totally decoupled home and work. In fact, more Minnesotans today leave their home county to work than don't, right? So this is part, and we kind of hit the bridge in 2018 was the first time a majority of Minnesotans are leaving their home county to work every day. Every day. Look across the state, or sorry, across the country, and you see 48% are in this is the variable the other way. 48% stay home in their home county. 54% stay in their home county. 72% in Montana stay in their home county. Arizona, these numbers are big because their counties are so big, right? They're huge. So it's kind of destiny that you're going to be in your home county because the jurisdiction is so large. I did some work in Claude last night just to try to portray the extent to which of Montana. I know we got a bunch of Montana folks here, but we could do this for really any state. Um, and it really kind of delineates the changes from 1970 to 2022. That we see some of these counties just in like a loss of 43% in the percentage of people that are staying home, right? Percent working in home county over time. There was a reduction, and then we started to climb back out of that. But overall, there's a decline, and this has been consistent across all the states. Then we can look at the changes just over the past 20 years, and we actually see some appreciation. We see some of these counties doing better. Powder River is the only county that actually had a plus on this. So for me, it's like a measure of local power, local job attraction. They're able to both house, so it could be an improvement in housing that allows them to house the people that ultimately are working here. So there's a lot of different dynamics, but the acknowledgement here is that there's these interactions in our regions. And my point is, we don't live in the middle of nowhere. We live in the middle of everywhere. And it's regional. So then the extent to which we live in these regions becomes kind of interesting. So I work for Extension. And so I do, we have like 150 people at a community meeting. And this is an exercise we do to show the extent to which we do not live and work and shop and play in just our place. So we hand out an exercise, which is a blank map of like people's region. Right? And we'll hand out this map, and in the top left corner, it'll ask people's age, and in the top right-hand corner, we'll ask them to list their favorite assets, and you'll see what's going on here in a minute. So what do? This is my example when I lived in Hancock. So this is Western Minnesota. If you look at Minnesota, there's a bump right here, like that's the bump. We lived in from the bump. So what we ask people to do is identify their home with a star, and then put an X where you or your partner works. And it's, again, not always the same place. Now, think about, in the past year, how far have you gone to shop and eat out? And again, now you like, yeah, I did, in Hancock, we had Buddy's Bar and Grill, which was pretty good, but I didn't want to eat at Buddy's every time we went out to eat. There were restaurants all over the place that we went to. So again, thinking about how far have you gone in the past year to shop and eat out? And then do the same thing. Draw this boundary around how far have you gone to play and recreate, and then fill in the rest of this. And what you find is people live in these huge regions all the time. This is just shop and eat for the people for this small group of people that we had in McLeod County, Minnesota, which is west of Minneapolis, St. Paul. We asked them during the pandemic, we had to do this virtually. So we asked them on this map I had to draw their region, so it looks kind of bad, right? This is, we're drawing with our cursors and with our mice. So, but again, the point is nobody just puts a dot and says, I never leave. The dots on here are reflecting where people work. So how do you understand the extent to which your community is seen across your region? How much does your region get seen by those in your community? So one day, Hope Williams, who was the economic developer in Wadena County, north central, or kind of central Minnesota, called and had emailed me and said, Ben, I really want to work on these concepts around like blurring the lines. And this is where she was, Wadena County, right here. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great because this is just the part and parcel of how we think about everyday life. So, kind of my point is today, modern problems and modern societies require modern tools. So while on one hand, we have this on the map data, which is county level or kind of city data, or we could draw a radius around things. But you know what we also have? Cell phone data. And if you don't know, Placer AI is a cell phone data behavior repository. So you know this on the map or these kind of middle of everywhere questions that we had before about, hey, how far people are going to shop and eat and work? Well, now we have cell phone data. We know who the residents are. We know who's coming into work, and we know who the visitors are, those over the age of 18. There are constraints to using this data, but now you can answer questions about, hey, how many people came to town last year? How many people came to town not last year, but last weekend for the event we had? What's the dentist number look like? How many people are coming to the YMCA? How far are they coming from? Then you can get at times or specific events. And we are doing studies right now about what's the impact of rerouting the highway for construction. So again, now Dee Lemaire leads up our efforts using Placer AI data to help illustrate the extent to which your county or your city is not the end all be all of how we do our work. This is how people behave in our regions. So again, now this is the work locations for people that live there. This is oh, is this the same one? Wadena? Oh, this was a different county. And so we've done this a few times. This is Cass County, how far people are going to work. This is Wadena County, people going to work. Now you can ask the same questions that we have in our exercise. Like, how far did you go to shop and eat out, right? Here's how people in Cass County went to eat. So it's not, nobody hits a county line and like, I better not leave. But, a lot of times, like if you're on the chamber, that's a county level or county level EDA, like you do get flack for going to the next town and spending money. It's like, why'd you buy the car in Monaga? You should have been buying that in the county in Pine River, whatever. So this helps us answer questions. And it's really illustrative for me and for our team to help communities understand the extent to which they're interconnected. So now again, you can answer questions about how far are people going to shop and retail. And then you can look at things like over time. You can understand who your residents are, how many visits. And again, this measures visits. I go grab breakfast in the morning, and then I go to work. And over lunch, I went to grocery shop and I went back to work. And every one of these things becomes a visit. And so we count the number of kind of places and visits that people make, and it's delineated by those three categories again. We know who the residents are. They're in red. And you look at the consistency of human life, right? It's not like there's random things happening in people's lives. It's you go to work every day. On the weekend, you're doing different things. You can literally see all these patterns. Green are the employees, the people coming in to this is Cass County, people coming into Cass County to work. And then the blue are the visitors. Cass County is a recreational county. Who's coming in? So like Dee asks questions like, if you go into the grocery store, who do you bump into? Random, if you were a random chance, right? In February, you're probably going to bump into either an employee or a resident. But in the middle of the summer, it's more than likely. So now here you can delineate like, hey, how did our event do last year? And not just how did it do, but how did it do compared to the year before? This opens the door not just to the questions that we can ask, but to timely data. Because again, you recognize, I don't remember if you saw, but that on the map data is from 2022. It's 2023 right now. But again, this is 3 years old. Placer data is from 2 weeks ago. We're working up in Pelican Rapids, Minnesota. They have Pelican Fest. For the past 2 years, or maybe it was just last year, they had construction and it hit their numbers. So we're looking at the patterns of traffic patterns to see how did people still arrive at this location 2 years before, a year before, when they had the construction, and now this year when they don't have construction. So again, we're delineate this location over a short period of time and examining the dynamics of the visitors and the residents in the community. So, how do you talk about yourself? Like if you don't know, North Dakota and northeastern North Dakota, they this is gangbusters. Like they do a really awesome job of recognizing like we don't just live and work and shop and play in one place. We work in a whole region. So they have something called the rendezvous region. And they recognize again that all of these different assets are used by everybody, a lot of people, right? So what do? They have not just like what's the best, restaurant in town. It's the best restaurant contest in the rendezvous region because now you find out about all these new things. So part of this now again is shifting our unit of analysis to the region. And rather than examining places, we need to understand the extent to which our places are connected across space, around topics. But we still have all these transitions that are occurring. Like we have places right on the core metro, right around the core metro in our rural communities that become urbanized constantly. So we've got these ex-urban transitions occurring too. But I'll say like there is a huge there, our world for me is understood on the context of urbanism, urban idealism all the time. And it makes us cram our ideas into extremely small places, right? Like you have urban ecologists who believe you need to live and work and shop, play in just one town. Well, that's not the reality of my world. We are in spatially separated neighborhoods, is what one of our demographers called them. Our rural communities are vast regions. So now, how do you talk about your place? If you're so parochial that everything's got to happen in my town, like that's a disservice to advancing the commonalities of our communities. So I think just a big thing here is like we're not just freight and farms. You saw like it's four-wheelers, it's snowmobiles, it's bicycles, it's golf carts, like it's canoes, it's festivals. We have all these different ways in which people are constantly interacting with our communities. But I just like to share a term with you called Sonder. John Koenig is an author that wrote this book, and he made up this term called Sonder. And it's kind of this recognition that life is inherently massively complex. And actually, like us understanding this at all is a pretty amazing thing because every day when you drive even down your most rural road, there's like a car that passes you, and a little bit later, there's another car that passes you. This is a gentle reminder that every car that passes you is a massively complex life with their choices, their regions, their spending, their, all of their lives. So in many ways, transportation data has been at the forefront. And I kind of tongue-in-cheek say, like, you all have had your fingers on the pulse of change for decades, but there's no good way to display it and share and communicate this information. So I use the middle of everywhere as a concept area to talk about the extent to which we live and work and shop and play just with each other all the time. So for me, it is about narrative. How do you talk about your place? I like to look through the eyes of the newcomers. And that is, they love your place. They don't care that you lost your grocery store 27 years ago. In fact, they will come to appreciate where you have been. But that is not the reason why people are moving in today. People are filling our homes with hope and opportunity today, and there is a ton of change coming. And when I say change, I mean the grain of rural from 25 years ago is now the dying of rural. We are 13 years away from peak death of the baby boomers, and then it is out with one, we're already seeing it, out with one and two-person households, and in with 3 to 5. And this is the story of rebirth, of renaissance, of our rural communities. So when we talk about our rural places, your narrative matters, because why would your rural communities invest in death and doom and gloom? Like, oh, these poor dying places, why would I put a new road out there? We are seeing this transition right now. The most rural county, the Center for Rural Policy and Development do these studies, and they talk about the most rural counties in Minnesota that now have the highest death rate, now have the highest in-migration rate. It is because our homes are full with older people, and there are all these other traits related to the, people moving in, how they live. So I'll just stop there and say I appreciate the work you guys have been doing for a long time. You're on the ground trying to keep us safe. And really, I like to supplement all the messaging we do just to talk about how we live. So Just a reminder, we live in a regional community in the middle of everywhere. I am going to be out of the office studying rural housing, studying co-ops, land trusts, a variety of ways in which cities can get help building their housing stocks or improving their housing stocks. I'll be on sabbatical through November. I start in about 2 weeks. So if you have any questions, I'll advise you to email me now or wait until like January 1st, or December 1st. So with that, thanks for being here today, really, and serving. Everything that I work on is a result of small towns and rural places saying like, yeah, but what about this? So if you have ideas for other areas for me to look into or to document the ways in which we are not dying, please let me know and share this in chat. So I'll stop here and we'll open it up for questions.
Perfect. Thank you. If you guys have any questions for Ben, go ahead and put those in the Q&A pod and we'll ask them to him now. Ben, we do have one question that's come in so far. They'd like to know if there is a correlation between the reduction of people moving primarily for a job and the increased ability for people to work from home or telework.
Yeah, somewhat. We had seen the data point we have on that is even the year before the pandemic, the 21% of newcomer households were telecommuting for a company not in their region. And that was before the pandemic even. So this has been playing in for a long time. This gets actually back to the narrative though. You may have a narrative that rural areas don't have broadband. We actually have some of the fastest broadband in America. And why? Because of cooperatives. Cooperatives have long solved our market failure. We may have a narrative out there around the digital divide. And while it's true that we may have some rural communities that do not have broadband, I will tell you the broadband I had in Hancock, Minnesota was gig synchronous for 15 years. And then I moved to a larger urban area and my internet went from 60 meg from gig synchronous to 60 meg down and 3.5 megabytes up. So for me, again, exposing the ways in which we can have a positive interaction with our rural communities gets at this narrative again. So yes, the compact city, the urban idealism out there. Like we do note that, but at the same time, this is not how patterns of behavior have been emerging. We look at the consistent pattern of our urban areas have not grown taller, they've grown wider. And they have consistently taken over formerly rural places, which looks like a decline in the rural population. So I think, in my opinion, all of these dynamics around urban ecology have been limited by actual human behaviors. There might be things around fuel prices or more episodic dynamics, but these, I paint the picture of there is a desire in American society for less dense environments. Take that for what it will, but I can go back to the 1920s and 30s. It is really the way, it is really, it's the reason why our suburbs are created in the first place. You know, we're in Minnesota, I don't want to live in Twin Cities like Hennepin and Ramsey County, so people moved out. And they created the first ring suburbs. But then in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, those folks who were in Hennepin and Ramsey County were like, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to move out. And then they look at the first ring suburbs, and it's just more metro. And so they moved out to the second ring. And this is, geographers, they call this a concentric ring growth around every urban area in the country. So again, our urban areas have not grown taller, they've grown wider, and because of a desire for this less dense environment. Thank you for the question.
Ben, we have one more question that came in for you, and it's wondering if you've been doing any research in Alaska.
No, but the data I do around leadership and diverse economy and, like the number of nonprofits growing, newcomers is all very consistent across all these rural places. I mean, the biggest differential is places that build housing. Yeah, I mean, right now it's a big limiter. You can't just move in. I mean, the number one audience we don't hear from are the people who can't make it in because there's nowhere for them to live. Like we've got waiting lists right now. So if you're interested in any of the Alaska data, let me know. But I know Alaska has a jurisdictional data issue too, which I'd be happy to engage you with. I'm glad you're interested. I'd be happy to meet separately because I know there are some data point issues there. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. And thank you again for sharing this different perspective on rural. We really love hearing all of the various perspectives we've brought in. Public health speakers to talk to us about the public health side of safety, and now having you as a sociologist come in and talk about some of the characteristics of rural from that lens, I think was very important too. So thank you for sharing today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull up our final presentation, which is going to be to talk with you all a little bit more about rural modes and get some information from you as well. So as Kevin spoke about at the very beginning, we chose rural modes for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week next month. We did this because there's a lot of movement of people and goods across rural America. And in doing that, we see that there's a variety of modes that can be used. But the biggest piece of this, when we look at everything from the safe system approach lens, is that we have a responsibility to ensure safety for all of the road users, regardless of which mode that they are using. And so we wanted to make sure that we could explore these modes, not only ourselves as practitioners, but also explore them with the public, make sure that they understand that even if some of these modes that we're going to discuss in July are not normally seen in their own rural communities, that as they become travelers and visitors to other rural communities, that they may come into contact with them and what they can do. And so you saw from those graphics that Kevin showed earlier, there's going to be both actions that the public can take, which were shown in the circles in the center, as well as those things that practitioners can take to increase safety as well. Because we do know, as we all know from the safe system approach, that death and serious injury is unacceptable. And we're really striving for that zero goal of no fatalities and no serious injuries. So what can we do for each of these different modes? So as Kevin showed earlier, we are breaking these modes down into the 5 different days for that week. And here are some examples for each of those days. So roadway regulars are those ones that we think about, that we see every day on the road wherever we live. So our cars, our pickup trucks, vans, sports utility vehicles, and motorcycles. Then we're also going to talk about those micro movers, some of those things that are used by individuals and also can be used for more of the recreational piece or the public health piece as well. So bicycles, e-scooters, e-bikes, some of those personal mobility devices as well. We'll talk about the big movers, which are super important because we know that in our rural areas, we have a lot of farm to table, and we're taking a lot of these goods from our rural areas to the urban areas. So we have a lot of the commercial trucks and tankers, but then we also have our own practitioner vehicles that are being used as well. So those emergency vehicles that are out on our roadways all the time, our snow plows in the cold weather areas, and then farm equipment as well. And we see different challenges in rural areas with some of these vehicles compared to some of the others as well. On Thursday, as I mentioned, the route runners we're going to be talking about, and these are things such as rideshare, bus, rail, on-demand shuttles, and school buses. And again, we have unique considerations for some of these different modes in a rural area that we wouldn't necessarily find in an urban area. And we talk about things such as big jurisdictions and low ridership. And so how can we still provide some of these services with some of those concessions that we have to make for the rural areas. And then lastly, on Friday, we'll do the uncommon cruisers. And so we'll talk about things such as ATVs or UTVs that are used for transportation, usually on the roadside, but could also impact the road itself. Horse and buggies, dog sleds, and bush planes. So some of those modes that we see in particular rural areas, and it's really important to still share information about these, especially when we talk about speed and those speed differentials of a roadway regular or a car or truck coming up on some of these slower moving modes, and how we can make sure that we're acting or driving appropriately near these and not causing crashes to occur. So some of those rural characteristics that we talk about when we start looking at different modes and thinking about these, we have different vehicle mixes in a rural area than we typically would in our urban area. So we're going to have more of those slow moving vehicles that I mentioned, such as the agricultural equipment, horse and buggies. And then we also have some of the more tourism type modes in our rural areas as well. So we're going to see more motorcycles who tend to like the rural back roads than using the high speed roads. We're also going to see a lot more recreational vehicles because we have a lot of national parks and public lands, ski resorts, our large lakes. So we have an increase of those drivers who are unfamiliar with our area and may even be unfamiliar with some of the modes that they're choosing to use as well. We have high freight usage, as I just mentioned, in our rural areas, really trying to move those goods to the communities that need them. We have that lack of sustainable options for some mobility, and so finding other options that can really help people move around that can be those unsustainable pieces are usually due to distance and the ridership. And rural is more car dependent right now, but we need to provide those other options. So how can we do that in a good way? And as we get to talking about some of these mobility options in July, we will be bringing in our friends from the National Rural Transit Assistance Program who are going to talk about some of those sustainable ways that we can do this in rural areas. We also see a lot of older vehicles in our rural areas, and with this comes the fact that there are less safety features in the older vehicles. So considering that when we're talking about this with the public as well. I'm going to go back to this really quick and give you a few statistics. So with the freight and the high freight usage, according to data from the Routes Initiative, about 47% of all truck vehicle miles traveled occur in rural areas. So that's a great statistics to consider. And then another one that they provided as well is about 44% of rural passenger vehicle traffic is actually urban residents. So considering that increased tourism and unfamiliarity with our areas as well. So another way that we can look at this as well when we start talking about different modes is why people choose the modes that they do and what some of those pieces would be. Some of them are geographical constraints. So in your rural area, you may have larger areas, weather that is part of what you're making a choice based on, the landscape, so the horizontal and vertical curves that are there, and also availability of facilities, whether or not there are safe places to ride bikes, or if there is large enough shoulders for horse and buggies. There could be modal attributes that people use to make their mode choice, so things such as flexibility. So are these different modes operated on demand, or are they on a fixed schedule when we're thinking about transit? Is there time flexibility or route flexibility available for some of our different modes? So perhaps as a road user, you would need to adjust your route, whether that be for weather, traffic, if you had extra stops, so which mode you're choosing based on that. Convenience is often a thing that goes into modal choice. So whether or not you need to transport a lot of cargo, if you're going shopping, you're taking tools with you or luggage, or if you are just going point to point, or if you need to stop at multiple different places. Comfort could also be another reason why particular modes are chosen. So your ability to control things such as your temperature, your audio, or your seating. We also can look at road user needs. So this could be things such as our younger populations that don't yet have licensing, or our older populations that are aging at home, as Ben just talked about. Or we could talk about those who may not have cars. Other road user needs could be people who are traveling with their family, or those who are making decisions because not only do they need to get somewhere for mobility, but they'd like to exercise at the same time, and they're choosing based off of that. We also have beliefs and attitudes. As we talk about our transportation safety culture, we can also think about this as part of our modal choice. So do people have underlying beliefs or attitudes about particular modes? And that's why they're choosing whether they will or will not use those particular modes. Long-term mobility decisions, again, Ben touched on this a lot as well. So that aging in place and how this impacts people and their ways to get to food and to medical appointments as well as they get older. Safety is a big one, which is mostly what we'll be talking about this week due to being the National Center for Rural Road Safety. But all of these things could include available facilities for our different modes, how their roadway design is impacting our safety, how behavioral choices could impact, and then the risks that we have. We know there are very specific risks in rural areas as well. And lastly, efficiency in getting from place to place, whether that be people or goods as well. So those are just a few of the things we're going to be talking about as we walk through Rural Road Safety Awareness Week next month. We are working through putting together the websites, which will include resources for you all. We also will be having at least 2 webinars during Rural Road Safety Awareness Week with speakers coming to talk about the particular modes that we're looking at for that week. So we're very excited to announce those here next week. But one of the things we would really like to know from you is, as a practitioner, what would be most helpful to you as you work to increase safety for all modes in your community? Are there particular questions that you might have that you'd like answered? Are there particular resources that you're looking for on specific modes? So if you'd love to drop that information into the chat pod, we would love to see that, and we can work towards trying to answer some of those questions or finding those resources for you and making sure they're on our website. You can also send those to us at info@ruralsafetycenter.org. Again, we really put together these Rural Road Safety Awareness Weeks based on things we think that could help you as practitioners. So if there is anything that you're looking for, we'd love to know that so that we can make sure we're going in the right direction for you. And then finally, before we wrap up for today, I do want to also let you know that National Rural Transit Assistance Program is celebrating Rural Transit Day on Thursday, July 16th. And this will match up with our Route Runners Day. With their Rural Transit Day, they have a pledge and proclamation and toolbox available on their website that you can find at the QR code here. They're also hosting 2 events that day. A rural transit prequel from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern, and then a Rural Transit Day Zoom chat from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm sure they would love to have everybody attend those as well on their Rural Transit Day. So again, you can find more information on the events and information for their program at this QR code. And with that, I am going to stop and check the chat pod real quick and see what we might have. And if whether or not we have any questions before we get wrapped up. All right. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A pod now. While we're waiting to see if any final questions come in for Kevin or Ben, I do want to thank you all again for joining us today for our sneak peek. The recording for today's webinar will be available on our website within the next few days. And all of the graphics and web pages for Rural Road Safety Awareness Week will be out for that week's. It will be July 13th through the 17th again. We would love to have you share our information. And we will be announcing next week our webinars that will be hosted that week. So thank you all for joining us. And thank you again, Ben and Kevin, for your presentations today.